This here is gonna be a night that we never gonna forget.
We're gonna have to upgrade our clientele.
This land we standing on belong to us.
Thank you for tuning into USG University, a series of conversations about the artistry that goes into bringing us incredible stories. This series is developed in partnership with Roybal Film and Television Magnet, a secondary school with the mission of building a more inclusive pipeline of college and career-ready students interested in below-the-line roles in the film and TV industries. I'm Marcus Jones from IndieWire. Joining me today from Fight Night, the Million Dollar Heist, is showrunner, EP, writer Shaye Ogbonna, costume designer Ernesto Martinez, and hair department head Lawrence Davis. Thanks, everyone. Let's kick things off with a clip from the premiere, and then we'll dig into the creative process and impact of the various crafts represented on the panel.
Get down! Paid the cost to be the boss. Paid the cost to be the boss. I paid the cost to be the boss. Look at me. You know what to see. See a bad mother. Look at me.
Mr. Moulton, gentlemen, I trust y'all had a smooth flight.
I just want to welcome y'all to Atlanta. Say, Mr. Cadillac, Mr. Lamar, of course, Mr. Moulton. Listen, whatever you gentlemen need while you're here in Atlanta, I'm your man.
Who are you? You are party host?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chicken Man?
Guilty as charged, yeah.
Know what to see? See a bad mother.
I half expected his ass to cluck.
I got that for you, Mr. Moulton, please.
The Chicken Man don't cluck.
So I feel like that's such a great clip because it is this introduction to all the characters we're seeing, this world that we're entering. But Shaye, if you could just tee it up about what Fight Night is. I understand this is based on a true story.
Yeah, Fight Night is a limited series based on a true story that happened in the city of Atlanta in 1970. Muhammad Ali fought his first fight following an exile for not participating in the Vietnam War effort. And he lost a few years of his life in his career in his prime. And this is his first fight back from that suspension or whatever you want to call it, that hiatus. And it was in Atlanta, and it was a big deal for the city. It was the city's first huge event, kind of in its new phase of being kind of like on the other side of Jim Crow and the civil rights movement and rebranding itself as the city too busy to hate. And it was a big event. And then that same night of the fight, there was a robbery of a post-fight party that was hosted by a local hustler named Chicken Man. And people presumed that he set it up. And so he became a prime target of the people who were robbed, who happened to be some of the most dangerous gangsters in America, Black gangsters in America. And he ultimately goes from being kind of a hero to being a target. And the policeman who was the head investigator of the case is J.D. Hudson, played by Don Cheadle. And they ultimately end up having to partner together to try to solve the crime and save Chicken Man's hide.
Was this something where you could get really creative, or are you a little more strict to, I've seen these photos of Chicken Man of Ali back then.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure we like capture that as close to what it was as possible. I mean, Ernesto, I believe you could speak to this as well with the costumes.
Well, you know, the actual Chicken Man and Kevin Hart were very different people in stature and what they could wear. And what Chicken Man wore was not something that would be as great for our Chicken Man. So, you know, we molded it in collaboration with the looks of 1970 and what would resonate best and look like a real hustler, like a real, hustler type, and Kevin would still shine as an artist. And I think we came up with some really cool stuff. We did a little bit of shaft, the leather, we did a lot of denim. And, the trick is to make the actor comfortable as well in the costumes, and he can feel like his own version of Chicken Man. So, because the story is about Chicken Man, but we, like, who knows what he was wearing in that month? You know what I mean? We didn't have actual pictures of him in that moment. So we could take creative license, and we did.
Shaye, is this something that comes up in the script process as well? Because just looking at that clip again, all these hustlers, they have such distinct looks, and we see that throughout. I wonder if that was in the script too.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, what I try to do in the script is I try not to do what I like to call overwriting, which is just to write every detail of a character. What I try to do at the best, I try to give you the essence of the character. And yeah, there may be like one particular thing they may have, or activity they may do, or trait that I'll write because it helps you to identify the character within the script and within the world. Because I mean, and we'll probably get into this. This show had a lot of characters and a lot of like characters that had arcs and multi dimensions, not just background. So it was important that they be identifiable. And the way you can do that by giving them a certain piece of wardrobe or Frank's licorice stick, you know what I mean? Or Terrence's wig, which I don't even remember writing that into the script. You know what I mean? I just think you write the essence of the character and you let the craftsperson kind of like create and go with it. And then you just try to again mold it into the framework of the story you're trying to tell. So for me, I try not to go too much in detail within the actual script of what the character may be dressed in or what they may look like, because I feel like it just kind of slows down the reading the script and really getting into the story. But best believe once we're getting into like the pre-pro phase and we're talking about it, I'm absolutely obsessed and into those details, because those are the things that again set the character apart and make the character identifiable.
Lawrence, I wonder as well with the hair, I was just talking about the characters being so distinctive. Like, what were some of the conversations with the actors? Did they have input on like, I want my hair to have a streak or to be this perm? Or was it more like, this is what the character or the person your character is inspired by looks like?
When I did my initial show and tell, some of the characters, I pulled I want to say a good maybe 10 inspiration pictures for a few of the characters. But for Terrence specifically, Terrence came with the idea of the Bee Gees and the Gibb brother as his as his character. I originally wanted to do a blonde colored wig on Terrence, but he brought this particular look to us, which was a little ahead of 1970, but it worked totally fine for 1970. And Chicken Man in particular, I wanted to give Chicken Man a fro, but not something that was too big. He's a short man, of course, but I wanted to give him something that was, 1970, but still a remnant of the 60s. We did a flashback to the 60s when he was first arrested, and I needed to make sure that wig worked for 1970 as well as 1960. So it's just a matter of tucking the sideburns under and putting a part in the wig and comb it back. And you were set back 10 years from where we were. So I wanted to make sure I presented something for him that was definitely flexible. And I like the characters themselves. I just got inspiration from what I flipped through on, from old Ebony magazines, from old references that I got from Pinterest, and 1970 specifically, because there was a fine line between 69 and 70, and some people were more fashion forward and some people were still stuck in that decade behind. So it was just a mix of the both.
I mean, obviously, when you're doing a period show, what's going to be really specific and really important besides locations is hair and costumes, and specifically with doing this culturally specific show at a culturally specific time. And that's something we talked about. It was important that not only that we had authentic, looking wigs and authentic, costuming, but that it also would be part of character. You know what I mean? Like Lawrence talked about Chicken Man's afro, and how it was different, a few years before, and how now it was a little bit more grown out, but not as grown out as maybe other people. That was something, those little touchstones, those historical, cultural touchstones are very important. And that's what kind of like, I think that's the difference. I think the difference between great and good, specifically when you're doing a period piece, is details. And I'll be watching something, I'm looking deep. I'm trying to find out, oh, that stove was from like 1987, bro. No, And so it was important for me that all those things were accurate, because again, I'm from Atlanta, and I gotta walk in Atlanta. I gotta walk through Atlanta. I got family in Atlanta. I got friends there, and they're gonna all clown me when they say, hey, that wasn't the right wig. That wasn't the right stove or the right costume. So it was important that we really be drilled down on the research and the authenticity.
Lawrence, I think something that stands out about the hair in this show, Fight Night, is that with certain people, it's telling a story through these characters' hair.
Vivian's background was, we find out during the hostage situation that she's a former stripper. So, that's something that a lot of people didn't know, but it was a very vulnerable moment when she had to, kind of do that thing in the basement in front of all those people. But for her as a woman, she was well put together. She had, this luscious mane of hair. And I wanted to show that, she was a woman that took control and took care of herself. So when we first see her in the bar, and she has this beautiful head of hair. I wanted to make sure that that came across as, something that was breathtaking to the viewers and noticed right away. And when we transitioned her to the shorter haircut, she, not necessarily wanted to do it, but I wanted to make sure that I presented something that was liked by viewers. And my inspiration for that was Diana Ross, the bob that she wore with the Supremes. I presented that to producers for my show and tell, and they loved it. So we went with that, but I wanted to make sure she definitely shined throughout the entire season of the show.
And you were talking about sideburns kind of being the cherry on top. I would love to hear more about that.
For me, Chicken Man sideburns definitely were the cherry on top. Most wig makers will not make a wig with sideburns that big. And I was adamant about, making the sideburns a part of the wig. Normally in the industry, and it's a union rule, that anything about sideburns are a makeup thing. It's definitely a makeup department. But as a former barber, I know that I like doing my own sideburns. I would not depend on makeup to do my sideburns on a haircut. But the wig maker said, we'll do exactly what you want to do. And I said to myself, this is going to cut down lots of his prep time, because otherwise he'd have to go to me to get his wig on, and then to the makeup department to get his sideburns on. So that was a unique situation, and I was glad that they were able to do that for me. And I had the flexibility, like I said earlier, of taking those sideburns and tucking them under and going back a whole decade to 1960. So the flexibility was important to me, and those sideburns saved the day.
And do you have any sort of favorite hairstyles throughout the season?
I really don't have one. I love them all. I really do, because they were all unique and they fit those characters. And I wanted to make sure my actors not only felt comfortable, but that they did their best work. So landing where we landed with each individual person gave them the ability to do what they needed to do.
Question for all of you, like, what is that collaboration? Was each person kind of different in the way they were approaching their characters?
Well, for costumes, I wanted the Frank Moten crowd, their posse, to look really much more sophisticated than the Atlanta. They're suited, they have on suits, they have on coats, they have on ties, they're polished. I thought Frank would look like an English banker. He wears a Homburg, very, very toned up, And then the people from Atlanta were very much more relaxed, like Chicken Man is in leather, and denim, like that.
One thing like Ernesto and Lawrence have been talking about that has been so amazing, and it's so evident in the show, is just the historical accuracy, specifically the cultural accuracy. Just like what Ernesto is talking about right now, like we're just on the verge in Atlanta of New Yorkers starting to come down and kind of like inject themselves into the culture, and like him picking up on that, on the differences and sophistication, that was a very real thing. And specifically with what Lawrence was talking about, like we're in 1970, right? So we're right in the between 60s and the 70s are just starting. So the idea that Chicken Man's wig was still, his hair would still be reminiscent of that period, because there is kind of a bit of a difference. There's people that are still kind of stuck in that age. And then there's the 70s that are coming, and it's going to be a little more wild and free. So the fact that they were able to capture those very specific kind of cultural, historical touchstones are really what set the show apart, but also what really validates my belief in them and the collaboration. Because the way I work in terms of like what Ernesto was talking about with me collaborating, every person, all my crafts department people, they're storytellers. Yeah. And for me, I'm just like, I give you a little bit of a blueprint and you run with it. And you can see it. It's all over the show of just like how Ernesto and how Lawrence, how hair and wardrobe and even obviously art is just so specific and so on point. I hear from people in Atlanta that were like alive during that time period, and they mentioned specific things, like, man, how did you get that? And it came from the research, and it just came from collaborating and trusting these incredible artists.
And if we can go back to the clip that we showed at the beginning, is there any element that sticks out to you?
When I rewatched that, Frank's girls jump out to me. They were what you call up north girls, and they looked the part. They came off that plane, they were sophisticated, they were well done, and they were ladies. They've said nothing, but they said a lot by the way they looked. And the collaboration, once again, with hair, makeup, and those costumes set the tone for that whole exit off of the plane. Those girls were gracious, and they allowed us to do what we need to put them in character, and they loved it.
Sometimes when there's a project this big, there's so many details that you have to keep track of. And there are certain things that maybe it's a hyperfixation or something like that. All to say, is there kind of a small detail that you worked on that really made a difference, whether it's like the button on a suit or whether it's a beat of a certain scene that you're so happy that maybe Kevin knocked it out of the park? If there's something small that was so big to you that you got it right.
Oh, well, I thought that Chicken Man's denim suit that he wears throughout was really something I was very, very proud of. I designed it, I had it made, and it fit him like a glove, and it looked so the period and so right. Mm-hmm. There was another one that I made for him that was like black, and I kind of embellished it with patches, like 1970s Sly in the Family Stone kind of.
The one that comes to mind is very specific and probably relatively small, but it's personal and special for me. And it's a very small moment. It's a moment in episode 6 where J.D. Hudson interrogates the wife of a robbery suspect in a Riches, which is in Atlanta, which is Atlanta's version of Macy's. And it was a store that I grew up in and no longer exists. I remember it was like the first place where everything was like luxurious, and it was a kind of what we would call an uppity department store. Like my grandmother got a fur coat from that one time, and so I wrote a scene in Riches, for hopefully we get it. I never thought we would, but we actually were able to shoot in the original. I could be wrong, the downtown Riches, and we were able to shoot outside, and we used a lot of resources to get like a small scene, but I think that was a testament of how important authenticity was to us, because it's such a special scene. I watch that and I get emotional because it makes me think about, my mom and my aunt and the generation right above me who were around during that time. And it was kind of my little love letter. The whole thing was a love letter to the city, but that was really like a special scene. And it was just like this small thing that we really had to work to get, in terms of resources, but they got it. And I was like, you don't have to, but I think people knew how important it was to me, and they really came through, and it was really cool. It was a small thing, but it was important.
I'm thinking Black Vegas, gambling, liquor, women.
You still need to reach out to the council of all the top black bosses across the nation.
Who the fuck is this?
Chicken Man.
Chicken Man.
Chicken wing?
Well, thank you for joining us for this year's USG University. Fight Night, the $1 Million Heist is now streaming on Peacock.